What's up, everyone? Welcome into Fantasy Football Office Hours presented by Front Yard Fantasy. I'm your host, Simon, joined as always by Professor Joey Wright, here to answer your fantasy football questions. What's up, Joey?
I didn't know that I was a professor now, but I'll take it.
It's office hours, and you sure as hell aren't my student.
Oh, I get it.
Guys, also joining us today, we've got two of the best IDP minds in the business here to help you answer your fantasy questions and any specific IDP questions you may have. We've got Kraig Reuth here with us today. Kraig is the creative director over at Reuth Fantasy, the host of Player Normal Activity, and the king of the dad joke. He can pull them out of anywhere. No matter what it's related to, he's got a dad joke for it. Kraig, thanks so much for joining the show today, my man.
I appreciate it, but you left out a word. It's the king of the bad dad jokes. I mean, there's plenty of people that pick and choose and do that much better than I do, but I go for volume. So
you're underselling yourself, Kraig. There's high quality in there. Guys, also joining us today, we've got our friend Nate Marcum on the show with us. For those of you that do not know Nate, you can find him on Twitter at Nate Marcum. He is the head of IDP over at Fantasy and Frames, a host on the Shoot the Gap podcast in the Fourth and Frames pod, and a top 5 IDP ranker over at Fantasy Pros. Nate, thanks so much for joining us today, my man.
Yeah, anytime, fellas. Good to see y'all.
And guys, for those of you that do not know, I know it's a newer format. Not everybody plays it. IDP stands for individual defensive player, and it's a way to get defensive players involved in fantasy. Nate, maybe for people who haven't played IDP a little bit, do you want to give them a quick rundown of what the format's like, what changes compared to regular fantasy?
Yeah, I mean, and that's the $10,000 question or comment when it comes to IDP is Kraig and I can play in 20 different leagues and there'll be 25 different scoring formats somehow. And that's probably been the bugaboo for everybody is that they want consistency, but it's the same. I mean, it's still a game. You know your rules, know your scoring formats. And typically in a IDP only league or a combination, you have 2 or 3 defensive line players. What does that mean? Hell, I don't know. A defensive lineman, maybe an outside linebacker, maybe just defensive line. Again, a lot of questions, some vague areas, but for the most part, it just allows you to play with the other side of the ball and gives you to watch the entire game. You have more, more piece of it. And so you get some defensive linemen, some linebackers, the defensive backs. Scoring can be tackle heavy where you get points more for tackles than splash plays, interceptions, fumble recoveries, etc., sacks. But yeah, it's just, I think it makes us a better offensive player as well if you understand the defensive side of the ball and how that affects the offensive players that you're looking at decisions.
That makes sense. And to one of your points that you brought up, anytime I'm watching a game and I'm like, man, this sucks for fantasy. Like I'm sitting there and I'm like, nobody's scoring points. My first thought is, I bet Kraig's having a good time. I bet Nate's having a good time. Like I bet these IDP guys are sitting there and they're cheering and they're excited because I'm sitting there going like, where are all my fantasy points? Well, they're on the defensive side of the ball. And then Kraig, you brought up this in the chat. You said, hey, everyone, any IDP questions you have, as much detail on scoring, starting positions, etc., will help us answer your questions better. And that sounds like it was kind of building off what Nate said there. Like it's different for every league.
Yeah, and I'm not looking for you, to post line item by line item, this much for a tackle, this much for a tackle for a loss, pass deflection, that stuff. But just if it, from what you describe it as, if it's sort of like big play, balanced, or tackle heavy, those are sort of the 3 main categories they fall into. It's going to help us because guys' value is going to fluctuate based on scoring, and without seeing, all the details of your league, we're still trying to give the best advice that we can. And if we're just going broadly, it might not apply to you, and we don't want to give up wrong advice intentionally either.
So
makes sense.
Is there like a standout stud for IDP? Like with this year, like Jonathan Taylor was the number 1 overall pick in all drafts. Was there like a number 1 overall IDP pick? It was like the first defensive player to go. Who would that be?
Kraig, who was your one to begin the season?
Well, I'm biased because I'm a Cowboys fan, but Micah Parsons.
Okay.
TJ Watt was a lot too. If it's more tackle based, your Roquan Smith, Darius Leonard before the injury stuff. Yeah.
Cool. Makes sense. Guys, before we get into our questions, I see we got a couple in here already. An IDP one to kick us off. I want to remind everybody to go and follow our guests right now. Whether you want your offensive player fantasy analysis or the IDP analysis, you can find killer analysis on both of these guys' Twitters. Nate is on Twitter at Nate Marcum. It's right there below his face on the screen. And Kraig at Reuth. Kraig, Ditto for him. It's below his face on the screen. Make sure you guys go over there and follow these two beautiful men. Let's get into our first question. Grim fan in here says, I have rode with Deron Payne in IDP leagues every week so far. Do I ride with him for the rest of the season except for the bye week 14, or do I look for someone else like Robert Quinn now that he's on Philly? Kraig, I'm going to throw this one to you first. What do you think Grim should do here?
If you have room to pick up Quinn, I'd like to do so because I think in a lot of formats, he's going to have the ability to get you more points week to week. But at the same time, you don't know how he's going to be completely used. You know, there's a lot of hope for Hassan Reddick when he went to the Eagles this offseason, and he's helped them in real life a lot. For fantasy-wise, he really isn't what he was last year for us, and a lot of those hopes have been dashed. So adding another edge rusher into the mix, you know, could dilute it even more. So I'd kind of like to see how it plays out before you just go switch completely from one to the other.
Hey, do you agree with Kraig here?
I do. Yeah, like you said, that Philly front line, it has rotational pieces. And the one thing they haven't done is they haven't used really anybody on that right outside edge. They've only used Hassan Reddick on the left side. And I think Quinn might make that pass rush a little bit more dynamic from the outside the tackle position, which is, you know, the one thing that can just create havoc for that offensive line. This week, though, I will say I love Deron Payne. That matchup against the Colts interior line, the Colts outside line, the Colts offensive line has been blah. And if he gets lined up against a guy named Matt Pryor, it is all systems go. Watch out. It's he's been a revolving door at best.
And Joey, what do you think on this one? I don't think Joey and I are not as well versed on IDP, but that's why we've got Nate and Kraig here. So
I'll tell you what I think. I'm in a couple IDP leagues, and every time I have a question, I DM Kraig.
So we already did your step, your IDP process right there. Guys, we have Dave in here coming in with the toonie and said Team Kraig for this one. Dave, thank you so much, my man. Dave. We appreciate you so much. And Smokey the Cat in here with a super chat asking us a question. Thank you so much, Smokey. We appreciate it. Wants to know, traded Zeke, Monty, and Ayuk for A.J. Brown, Najee, and Allen Robinson. Wants to know how we're feeling about this. Nate, I see you nodding down there. How do you feel about this trade for Smokey the Cat?
I mean, man, with the Zeke news now, who knows how that's going to play out, if he's going to be banged up for how long. You know, Montgomery, I think Khalil Herbert's eaten into that workload. Ayuk is an upside, I think, with Debo being banged up, you know, but I'm not the biggest Najee fan, but it just seems like it's a solid workload, comparably speaking. And I think A.J. Brown's a true winner of that draft.
Yeah, A.J. Brown's my favorite. Yeah, A.J. Brown's my favorite player in this trade. And Najee's an RB2. Like, I know we're disappointed that he's an RB2, but RB2s are still valuable in fantasy. I want A.J. Brown, and the other pieces are valuable enough that I'm going that way. Kraig, what about you?
Yeah, I'm on the A.J. Brown side as well.
Joey, is this unanimous?
Yep.
Unanimous. Man, nice trade, Smokey the Cat. Juju in here. What's up, Juju? The Juju Smith-Schuster says 12-man half PPR. Am I winning this year? Carr at quarterback, Chubb and Walker at running back, then Evans, A.J. Brown at wide receiver, has Goddard at tight end, then ETN, Cooks, Sutton, Bateman, Allen Robinson, Rashad White, and Kirk Cousins. 12-man league. Whew. Joe, you're fanning yourself. What do you think about this team?
I'm getting the vapors. Juju, I like your team a lot. I'm going to tell you something to do to improve it. I don't actually see anything you do to improve it. Maybe try to – I'm not very high on Sutton going forth. If you have somebody in your league that's high on Sutton, maybe try to get something for him. Do a 2-for-1, upgrade at another position.
Kraig, how are you feeling about this team? Are they winning it?
It's a heck of a team. They got a great shot as probably anyone else.
Donovan in here had a question for us, and I think this is one of the things that's probably hardest for people who are starting in IDP. Do you have a formula when trading defensive players for offensive players? So across that line, Nate, what's your general practice when you're making trades across defense to offense?
So opportunity costs, I think, is probably what I look at the most. I try to look at the total point scoring because take the names away. You take the names away and you put up the point scoring, and it doesn't matter who the person's name is as much as it's the, again, like I said, opportunity cost of what you're giving up and who you have to replace said person. It's probably the most challenging thing in IDP leagues when they're crossing offense to defense because no defensive player. I mean, I think it would be hard to trade Roquan Smith for someone like I don't want to say Jonathan Taylor just because of the injury situation and what it's led up to, but maybe in that comparison, here you have a player on the down that's maybe looking up for the rest of the season, and it might be a good buy low or even a good opportunity to get Roquan Smith. And I don't think you can get the offensive player to let go of some of their elite, first round talent. Kraig, what have you found? If you've played in more of these leagues than I have over the years, is it you find the same challenge as I do?
Yeah, I find it really hard to, because you said at the start of the show, all these leagues are different in terms of their scoring. It's hard to get a handle on it from league to league for one thing. And then the other part, you have to take into account is that scarcity. Some of these IDP leagues, you might be starting one guy at linebacker, defensive line, defensive back, where it's going to be a lot easier to find somebody to get you relatively closer scoring off the waiver wire each week compared to your offense where you have 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, and a flex or something like that. So you kind of got to look at the positions. And then what you said, Nate, sometimes for leagues that I'm really invested in, I'll create a spreadsheet where I'll have, maybe the top 50 guys, or just have those ideas of where, okay, the scoring sort of tier breaks are for this is what, a top 12 at this position scores across the board, or top 24. That way I have an idea of if I'm trading for this defensive player, what do I expect him to score compared to top offensive players? It's not going to be perfect, but at least give you some sort of an idea.
Makes sense. I mean, I think it can be a challenge even just trading across offensive positions sometimes with the way the values differ, adding that extra dynamic, especially when it's something maybe everyone in the league isn't wildly used to valuing, and it differs so much can make it extra difficult. Joe, and you got a question for us.
Hey,
a
Joe.
3-way trade proposal doesn't give us the whole trade, but tells us the relevant parts for him. He's sending away Leonard Fournette, Terry McLaurin, Dallas Goedert, and Pat Freiermuth, but getting back Travis Kelce, Brian Robinson, and $25 fab. Joey, are you accepting this trade or are you moving on? Are you saying next?
I think you're giving up too much. I really do. I know you're getting Kelce, and I know how great and wonderful that can be. But let's just say Goddard and Freiermuth for Kelce. For me, Brian Robinson, I would not trade him for Leonard Fournette and Terry McLaurin. So I'm not going to make this trade, Joe. Yeah, I'm sorry, buddy.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I think because it's a 3-way trade, you're probably having to give up a little bit more just to make it balanced for everyone else in the trade.
Yeah.
But, man, it's tempting to get Kelce. Kraig, what do you think on this one?
It feels like too much for me, too. And, he sort of goes into what his lineup would be, which would be a stacked lineup. He says his sort of current running backs, looks like he's got Kamara, so Cook, Lenny, Melvin, Pacheco. So, it feels like you're giving up a lot of that depth, which is probably helpful to have right now. So it feels too heavy for me.
What about you, Nate? Because it does look like after Kraig mentioned that, we bring it up the team, it does look like it's mostly depth pieces, like bench, maybe some bench players that he's moving on from. Are you making this move or are you sticking with the package that he has? I'll pull it back up there.
No, I'm in agreement with you guys on this. And it is as tempting as it is to get Kelce, especially for me being the Chiefs fan. That tugs at my heartstrings. But realistically speaking, I always want to win the trade, if you will, and I don't feel like you're winning. I feel like you're conceding to get a better piece, but losing overall.
Yeah. Gabriel,
you have the team to do it though. Like now that I saw your whole team, it's like I still think you're giving up too much, but I get it. I get why you want to do it now that I've seen your whole team. So
Gabriel in here says Gus Edwards having a game tonight. Nate, how do you feel about Gus Edwards' prospects in the game tonight against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers?
I wish I knew more about the game time decision situation, even though I think he's all systems go is what it sounds like. But if you're Baltimore, what do? Do you give him the heavy workload like you did last week? Do you actually give Kenyon Drake more touches than what did he get one last week? Whatever it was, if that. It was, and
didn't he get like negative yards or something?
Yeah, it was not a great start, and I had him starting in one spot, unfortunately. So it stings a little bit. I don't trust too many, even though last week was such an anomaly against the Bucs and their run D. I don't love the two aspects, the injury leading up or the limited practices and facing a Tampa team. I think that with Bateman and Andrews back, I think maybe they'll pass a little more in the 15, 16 times like last week.
Kraig, what do you think? Do you think Gus Edwards is going to have a decent game tonight, or are you nervous about his prospects?
I'm nervous about it if they end up having to throw the ball, if the defense for Baltimore doesn't show up and Tom Brady does decide to show up, because we've seen weird things. It seems like every Thursday in the NFL this year, they may have to start passing the ball more just to keep up. And I know they're going to try to commit to the run, but with all the different options that they do have to run the ball, I think it's hard to bank on a big game from him again.
My only thing, maybe keeping some hope alive, is last week they seemed very comfortable throwing him in at the goal line. Like, it seemed like Gus Edwards was going to be their goal line guy. So if anyone's going to punch in a touchdown after Lamar, Gus Edwards is the guy that I want to throw that money on. So I think he's a pretty, like, as far as safe bets for touchdowns go, I'll put him in there, and that raises his floor for me a little bit. But I am nervous about the workload. Joey, are you confidently putting Gus Edwards into your lineup tonight?
No,
I
don't like Gus Edwards tonight. One, he's going against my Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Yes, my Tampa Bay Buccaneers. No, but I mean, the Bucs run defense is great, and I don't want to play any running back against them. I have him at RB 29 now that we found out Ezekiel Elliott's probably not going to play, so I took Zeke out of my rankings. And that's a flex at best, really. So I'm not excited about playing Gus Edwards. If I absolutely need to, I will. But I think there's only 2 teams on bye this week, so hopefully you've got better options than that.
Also, I saw Grim ask, what's FAB? So FAB is a waiver system, free agent budget, or sometimes free agent acquisition budget. Instead of there just being a list of who gets what player in order, you're all given some money, like $100 or $1,000. And each week you're bidding on players, and whoever bids the most, it's blind bidding, is going to get that player on their team. So it's a way to give everyone a shot at every player during that waiver period and encourage activity, because you're not sitting there holding on to your waiver priority. Grim wanted to know, what do you recommend that I can get for Kamara if I try to trade him? So Kraig, if you're trading Kamara away right now, what are you looking to get back in return? Maybe like what tier of player?
I guess it depends on what position you're going for too. I mean, if you're trying to upgrade a tight end spot, I don't think you can really just sort of do a 1-for-1 trade. I think, whoever has one of those top 2 tight ends like Kelsey and Andrews, in most cases isn't going to give up that competitive advantage at that position for a running back, especially with what we've seen out of running backs this year. But you also don't want to trade him for, to me, like a Dallas Goedert or something, who he's a fine startable tight end, but I think you're giving up too much to get something like that. A wide receiver, you can probably find something across teams a bit easier. But it really comes down to, in each specific league, okay, who needs running back if you're giving him up? And then if you're going for a wide receiver, what do those needy teams have that you feel comfortable with? Yeah. It's hard for me to pick names out of the air on these sort of things.
It makes sense. One name that jumped out in my mind, especially with the Jamar Chase news that just broke today, is maybe take a shot on T. Higgins. Yeah. Like, T. Higgins has been underperforming a little bit. He's still been good for fantasy, and he's about to be the one in that offense for the next 4 to 6 weeks. I think you might be able to swing an Alvin Kamara for T. Higgins trade, and I would be celebrating my socks off if I had that
ready to go. That
Same here. Yeah.
T. Higgins,
exactly.
I stole it.
It makes the most sense. I apologize. It really does.
It makes sense. Any other names that jump to mind?
So if you want to buy low, Aaron Jones, even though he had a really great, I guess you're not buying low. Aaron Jones had a really great week last week, and I love his schedule going forth, and I think Green Bay is only going to involve him more. And somebody might make a Kamara for Aaron Jones trade easily. So if you like Jones better than Kamara, there you go.
Let's see. We got a question in here from, what a beautiful, I think this must be a family name, Squid's Giant Chode. Is that French? He said, what it do, baby? Full PPR, Bateman or Pickens, driving me insane all day. What it do, Squid? There. Nate, are you starting Bateman or Pickens this week?
Oh, God. I mean, I guess depending upon, obviously, your team format and where you have these guys. I mean, if they're both your 3 or a flex spot and you have to choose one, or I mean, full PPR, I probably, it's hard to lean against Bateman because when he's been playing, he's been so heavily leaned on, and he's been productive. A lot of big play production, which is a little scary because that volatility is not one I want to mess with. But boy, that Pickett to Pickens connection sure seems to be decent. But I would lean Bateman over Pickens, and I don't love it, especially considering he hasn't gotten practice in, I mean, what, 2 weeks now, 3 weeks?
Yeah, it's been a minute. Kraig, are you starting Bateman as well in spite of the injuries over the past couple of weeks? Or are you going with Pickens?
If you're confident that Bateman is healthy enough and everything they see is going to be getting that full workload tonight, I'd be starting him because we've seen him and Andrews just be the two guys that get targeted when they do pass the ball when they're both out there. And Pickett is throwing to Pickens, but at the same time, that Philadelphia defense is pretty scary with the rookie quarterback back there.
Yeah. Joey, do you agree with these two?
Yeah, so I've got them 2 spots apart, and I'm going to agree with them, but I'm going to agree with them for a different reason. There's a lot of Qs out there. If you look at the lineups, there's a lot of questionable guys. Some of those guys could be out Sunday, get some points tonight. I think it could very well be a shootout tonight, and Bateman's going to be a big part of that if it is. So get the points tonight just in case one of your players is a surprise inactive.
I want a shootout. I could really use a Thursday night shootout. My energy's a little low. It's going to be hard to stay awake for a full game if it's not a shootout tonight. But
I'm fine with $45-$42. Like, I'm fine with that. I can live with that.
Yeah, I bet you sound fine. Yeah, you would be totally fine with that, right, Joey? What about 45-42 Ravens? You going to be fine with that? Nah, not nearly as fine.
No.
Go Start wants to know Connor or Henderson Jr. this week. So James Conner or Henderson Jr. Where are you going, Kraig?
If they're both healthy and starting, I'm going with Connor. Minnesota's been a lot less strong against the run than the 49ers have. And, I think they both have that risk of not being workhorse backs in the game because of injury situations and depth and just poor running games, from the Rams. So give me the guy that I think is going to have a better shot at getting me points. And this week, it's against the Vikings.
How about you, Joey? Are you agreeing with Kraig here?
Yeah, it's Connor, but I honestly think it's going to come down to which one plays because I don't think both of them are going to end up playing. I think one of these guys is going to be out this week, and I think it's going to be Henderson.
Nate,
everything I've been reading is that he's not going to play. But
are you on the Connor side of this one as well, Nate?
Yeah, and I'm not real comfortable with that even too. Other than I think that goal line work, even if Eno earned enough of a timeshare from last week, I still think. I mean, if you have to start one, I agree with Connor, or I agree it's Connor, especially with what Joy was saying.
I was talking about Eno and Connor earlier with somebody, and the last year Arizona went 7-1 when they did that 50-50 split with Chase Edmonds and James Conner for those first 8 games. I could see Arizona going back to that, get right on track, because Eno Benjamin looks good, and it looks like he has earned a role in that offense. So I would be surprised to see that happening.
Tamian in here had a question for us. What's up, Tamian? Said, first, traded my entire team, so I had 3 open spots on my roster. In a 16-man PPR, is Tony a good pickup? So, Nate, do you think Kadarius Toney is a good pickup in a 16-man PPR league? You've got empty roster spots.
I mean, 16-man league, you're talking, you got 48 receivers that you're starting every single week with bench spots needed if there's a flex. Yeah, I mean, the offense alone can support a couple different receivers plus Kelsey. I want to be optimistic again, the Chiefs fan in me, and we've seen what Kadarius Toney can do on a per route basis when healthy. But I can't imagine there's anybody better on the waivers or available than the upside of what Toney can bring.
Yeah, and I think you can be optimistic as a Chiefs fan without Kadarius Toney being good. Like you guys are going to be one of the best, if not the best, offenses in the NFL at year end. Whenever we're looking back on it, and Toney's joining a room with Sky Moore, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Juju Smith-Schuster, Hardman, and then of course Travis Kelce. We can't forget that he's there commanding targets. But that being said, 16-man, yeah, he should be rostered just for that upside.
I think
if
it
was
a
12-man,
16-10.
Yeah, probably. Kraig, Ryan wanted to know, should I trade D-Hop, Danny Dimes, and Kenneth Walker for Fournette, Amon-Ra, and Josh Allen? Would you be making that trade, Kraig?
In a redraft league, yes, I would.
Yeah. Joe, you agree?
Yeah, that's a smash.
I'm Dynasty probably.
I'm looking
Dynasty's a different question. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I'm a fan of that trade as well. Nate, do you like this trade?
Yeah, I do. I mean, even in Dynasty, I don't think it's crazy because, I mean, as much as I think Kenneth Walker is the polarizing name on this from a Dynasty standpoint, right? And then we know that obviously it's a big win over Fournette, but I think from a Dynasty standpoint, Amon-Ra is, over a 32-year-old D-Hop and Josh Allen. I mean, I'm fine with that from both aspects.
Yeah.
Also, I saw Tammy in here saying, "Oh, we do IDP questions here
This
today.
week we
do. We've got Nate and Craig.
We
That's
got
a
the
reminder
day.
for everybody watching. This is the IDP special of Fantasy Football Office Hours. We've got two IDP experts here with us. Joey and I are not going to be much help, but Nate and Craig are the dudes when it comes to IDP. So go ahead and throw those
We'll
questions
look
in
good.
there.
We'll sit up here and nod our heads at them. That's
I'll
about it.
wink or something. Donovan had an IDP question for us. He said, any sleeper linebackers this week to consider? I play in a 2 defensive player league, all defense allowed. And Nick Bolton is on bye. Linebackers score the most, 12 teams, so a 24 or deeper that could be top 15 this week. Nate, we'll come to you first. Any linebacker sleepers this week that you like for Donovan?
Outside of the top 24, I think Deion Jones is an interesting name for a situation where he could have been dropped and picked up because he wasn't really playing. And with the recent move and Phillips being on the IR, that situation isn't bad. Cincinnati is pretty generous to the linebacker position. Let's see if there's any. I mean, outside the top 24, it feels like, what does he say? It is probably a tackle heavy league since linebackers score the most. Craig, you got one? I want to get a good one.
I don't know the status of Josie Jewell because I haven't looked into that. But if he doesn't play, Alex Singleton is a great name for a guy that's just going to rack you up tackles, and going against Jacksonville isn't a terrible matchup.
No,
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Nate.
No, I was going to say that's a great call because Singleton, I mean, we saw 2 weeks ago. Good God, he had 14 tackles at halftime, ended up with 21. It was that was a league winner. Or a week winner, at least 60 points in some formats. That was impressive.
Absolutely. Guys, we had some more questions in here. JL in here said, boys, what's up, JL? Welcome in. Glad to have you in here. My friend
Simon.
Kyle had a question. Yes.
One more name I just wanted to throw out there. Leighton Vander Esch. They're going against Chicago, who we know loves to run the ball. And he's been, actually playing quite a bit for Dallas again after signing that late 1-year contract. He's getting the tackles, so that's just another name that I think might have a decent shot because we know. I guess we shouldn't know because maybe Chicago finally turns a leaf, but I still think they're going to try to run the ball a lot.
Yeah, I hope they run the ball a little bit less as a Darnell Mooney fan, but that's another great name to add there. And if they don't, which seems like the more likely option, probably another good option you could plug in this week. Kyle wants to know, please help full PPR, Tony Pollard, Aaron Jones, David Montgomery, and I'm guessing Latavius Murray, pick 2. So it needs to start 2 of those players. Nate, which 2 of those running backs would you be starting? Tony Pollard, Aaron Jones, David Montgomery, Latavius Murray.
First 2,
Tony Pollard and Aaron Jones?
Yeah.
Is that the same thing for you, Joey?
Yeah. Tony Pollard without Ezekiel Elliott on the field this week is going to be great. Yeah. If you look at what the Bears have given up to running backs this season, it's unbelievable. One of the worst teams against running backs. Fire Tony Pollard up, wheels up, let's go.
And then Craig, of these wide receivers, Boyd, Godwin, and Lockett, which one of those would you pick? You have to start one, Boyd, Godwin, or Lockett. Boyd with Chase out now, most likely. That's what we're seeing from Adam Schefter. Godwin back from injury, coming off 13 targets last week. And Lockett could be playing without DK Metcalf again as well. So some interesting situations for all these guys.
I would go Boyd, honestly.
Tyler Boyd. I don't blame you. I'm sitting here so conflicted between Boyd and Godwin, but 13 targets last week to Chris Godwin coming back off injury. Like, I'm going to plug Chris Godwin in and pray for that shootout tonight and that he's just the dude. Something interesting. I was just running through the player props for this game. Chris Godwin's receiving yardage total is ahead of Mike Evans. Like they expect him to get more yards in this game. They're saying he's back and ready to go is what that tells me, if that's where the line is sitting. Nate, of these tight ends, Darren Waller, Robert Tonyan, and Evan Ingram, which one would you start?
And I want to say I do agree with you on Godwin as well, just because that Baltimore secondary has been just getting eviscerated and giving up points and everything. But so Waller looks like a full go. I think that the news today that I saw is Devontae Adams was missing from practice with an illness. They don't know what the status of that's going to be. I hate to look ahead 3 days with an illness because that can be correctable. Yeah. But and Evan Ingram has been on the rise the last really 4 weeks. He's been, route participation's been great. Target volume's been there. But I think I'm going to lean towards Darren Waller for that reason, just especially if Devontae Adams is out.
What about you, Joey? Are you going Waller on this one? Are you agreeing with
Yeah,
me?
it's gonna be Waller for me. Ingram would be my last pick of the three between them.
Yeah, Kraig, what about you? Which one of these 3 tight ends would you start?
It's Waller pretty easily if he's healthy finally and going to be playing.
Mr. Scavers wants. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Joey.
About those receivers, the reason I would sit Tyler Boyd in this is because Cleveland Browns, they're not very good in defense, but they are good against one thing, and that's slot receivers. And Simon brought that up to me, and I've been hanging on to that. And I looked into it, and you're absolutely right, Simon. So I would actually I understand that Jamar Chase is going to be out, but you've got Godwin and Lockett there, and those are 2 top 15 options for me. And not just because I'm a Bucs fan with Godwin, but just because he's going to be great this week. So, yeah.
Makes sense. Scampers in here wants to know Gus tonight or Najee at Philly in a half PPR league. Joey, are you rolling out the Gus bus tonight, or are you going with Najee Harris against that tough Philly D?
I will take the Gus bus. I will park it in the parking lot, and I will roll Najee out on Sunday.
The old switcheroo. Kraig, what about you? Are you going with Gus or are you going with Najee?
I'm still going with Najee over Gus. There's too much ambiguity in that Baltimore rushing attack for me still.
What about you, Nate? Are you agreeing with these guys?
I am. Yep.
Yeah, I think I have to agree as well. It's going to be Najee Harris. Gus Edwards, not a bad start, but not someone I'm forcing into my lineup. Joseph said 12-team PPR, want to trade Sutton and Zeke for A.J. Brown. Would you guys be down with that move, Sutton plus Zeke for A.J. Brown?
Yes.
I think good luck. I think good luck getting that done. Joseph, I also want to trade Sutton and Zeke for A.J. Brown, but I'm not sure your league mate's going to be too happy with that one.
Joseph, I think you got great name, by the way. I think you kind of got a thorn in your heel with Zeke going to miss this week with trying to make this trade. And that's what sucks for you as far as that goes, because this might have been a lot easier to get done if Zeke wouldn't have been out this week, but now it's going to be a little tough.
You're right. If he was healthy, that's a lot closer. That's reasonable. Running backs are a hot commodity right now. Albert wants to know Mostert or Pollard, half PPR. Nate, are you going with Mostert or Pollard here?
It's Pollard. I don't know if when we get questions about Pollard, are there 12 other running backs that I would answer over Pollard this week?
I
don't think there
5?
are. Are there 8? Yeah, they're 5.
Yeah,
great question. What's the cutoff?
I think he's a top 10 guy this week. Like without Ezekiel Elliott, I think he's surely a top 10 guy. Kraig, how are you feeling? Is this Pollard or Mostert?
It's Pollard.
Pollard. It's a unanimous Pollard. Joey wants to say something. Oh,
can I talk about Raheem Mostert?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, last week, 16 carries, 79 yards rushing, 4 receptions and 30 yards, and a touchdown. So this is his 4th game in a row with 15 total touches. 4th game in a row that he's done this. The Detroit Lions have allowed an opposing running back to have 15 total touches in every game this season. Quickly, here are the PPR fantasy points for all those running backs. Miles Sanders, 18.5. Antonio Gibson, 12.1. Dalvin Cook, 15.6. Rashad Penny, 28.7. Ramondre Stevenson, 19.5. And Ezekiel Elliott, 17.7. For me, Raheem Mostert is a top 12 running back this week. I love him.
So is that over Pollard? Or no,
yes,
not over
Pollard.
Over Pollard. We got 1 Mostert and 3 Pollards.
No,
Joey,
I realized that I came, loaded with that because I had notes for another show. But I love
your reaction when this question showed up. Guys, we have another IDP question in here. Tamian said, I got Miles Jack, Bolton, Judon, Mosley, and Kobe Bryant, but can only start 4 a week. Who should I be trading for to upgrade this team? I'm 2-5, but hit 2 big trades to upgrade offense. So now looking to upgrade that defense. So, Kraig, if you're looking at this defensive lineup, are there players that stand out as like tradeaways or a player that you would be looking to target to add to this team?
Well, that's an interesting thing just based on sort of the positions they got here. I'm curious with the whole Kobe Bryant guy being on the roster, how big the league is. I mean, that name just sort of sticks out as a bit odd to me personally.
I bet
Miles Jack, Bolton, Mosley, I like as linebackers. Judon, depending if he's a defensive lineman or an edge in your league. hit 2 big trades upgrade offense.
I think they're just saying they upgraded that offense. Now they're looking to do the same thing on the defensive side.
I'd like to sort of know names on waiver wire if that's what you're looking to add someone from.
Is that Cody Barton instead of Kobe Bryant? Or
it could be.
That's
and
my
Tammy
guess.
said 16 man, but I like his name is why he picked that guy up.
Oh.
Nate, any players you'd be trying to trade for? Like, are there defensive players right now that you think are good buy candidates that would improve this team?
I think that the mention of Cody Barton has me intrigued to go out to the waivers and look for someone like Alexander Johnson, who the Seattle Seahawks just picked up. Johnson, despite being hurt last year, coming off of injury, picked up, has been for the last 3 years, maybe one of the best run stopping or run graded linebackers in the NFL. And Seattle Seahawks, what do? They allow a lot of plays, a lot of run plays to funnel through that defense because typically teams are up on them. And if you have a linebacker that statistically speaking is good at run play tackling, should be on the field the majority of the time, and opportunity presents itself because he's most likely going to be on waivers because he hasn't been on a team yet, that could be an instantaneous LB2 from the waiver wire. That's like adding an elite running back essentially that you didn't have a chance to straight from the waivers.
Also, I see Legacy in here asking, are they going between questions? We're doing our best to get to all the questions. We're going in order to the best of our ability that they came in. So if we missed yours, we're going to try our best to get to it before the end of this show.
And if we don't get it to by the end of the show, go to our Discord. I'll be in there after the show like I normally am answering questions.
We'll throw a link in the chat for you guys to join our Discord as well. Nate or Craig, anything else to add on this one before we move on to our next question?
Unless you have to start a cornerback, I'm probably not rostering Kobe Bryant, so I'd be interested to look to see who else is out there for defensive backs if he's your defensive back for the team.
Seems like an immediate way to upgrade right there. Jack in here wanted to know, I can't make a decision. What are we thinking, boys? Lamar or Burrow? What a problem to have, Jack. What a problem to have. This is tough for me. This is a tough one. I'm gonna punt and let Joey go first.
I have them as my quarterback 3 and quarterback 4. I give the slight edge to Joe Burrow.
Man, it is so close. What about you, Nate? Which way are you leaning?
Man, recency bias makes me want to lean Burrow because Lamar hasn't been so wonderful, but missing piece. So Lamar's gaining pieces, Joe's losing pieces. Great name for Joe Burrow, by the way, too, in case you didn't. And wait, that's not my cue. That's yours, Joey. Sorry about that. Forgot my role in here.
No, you can make jokes. What was the joke?
that he had a great name. No, Joe. Holy shit! This office hours are.
Come on, Joe.
Lord.
Joey's had a long week.
Hello?
It's all right.
Hello?
Sorry,
That's right, Bill. Yeah, I'll lean Joe Burrow.
That is right.
Oh,
I forget who he had on with us. I think it was Scott Rainier, and Joey just kept telling jokes. And after like the fourth one where I just did like stone faced him, Scott was like, Simon, what the hell does Joey have to do to get you to even crack a smile?
They were like top shelf. Like they were really good.
Just sitting there stone facing him after every single one. Craig, are you going with Lamar or Burrow?
I'm going with Lamar.
I'm with you.
It's hard to disagree.
I just don't want to sit Lamar. Like if I've got Lamar on my team, he's the kind of player that I want in my lineup. The Joe Burrow's been on a heater the past couple weeks, just absolutely killing it. Jamal Charles in the chat. Welcome in, Jamal Charles.
Welcome.
Wow. Hey, Juju Smith-Schuster and Jamal Charles. I can't believe it. He wants to know Ramondre Stevenson or Swift PPR. Craig, which way are you leaning on this one? Stevenson or Swift?
PPR, give me Swift.
What about you, Nate? Are you agreeing with Craig here?
Yeah, and PPR. I lean Swift as well. Obviously, news on Sunday. We'll find out more of what Swift's status is because that makes it easy. But at the moment, Swift.
It's Swift for me as well in a PPR. But you even bumped that down to half PPR, and I think I'm going to Ramondre Stevenson. Like I think the full PPR is the difference maker here. Joey, what about you?
So here's the thing. And I never disagree with the guests, so this is crazy. I never really like to start a player coming back from an injury if you've got an option that's comparable. And I think Ramondre Stevenson is comparable. I mean, you're asking the question if you start between the two. So I would probably leave Ramondre just because of a little bit of safety. Now Damian Harris was also coming back from an injury last week and didn't have much work. So now he could get ramped up and Ramondre's production could go down. I feel like a fool, but I would go Ramondre.
Well, and that's one of the reasons why from Ramondre, I'm lowering it just a little bit because I don't see the Jets from an offensive standpoint without Elijah Vera Tucker, without Breece Hall. I think their offense struggles, and I think New England possesses and controls that game. And if they want to control the game, it's probably a Damian Harris-led attack more than Ramondre. But it's Bill Belichick. So whatever I say doesn't mean anything because he could go out and run Ramondre 47 times, and Damian could catch 5 passes.
What's been really scary is like how accurate we've been with the running backs in New England the last like 3 weeks. It's just, I mean, it's Halloween, so maybe it's just like spooky season. Things aren't right. I'm like, well, I know I'm going to put him in my rankings that high, but he's not going to produce. And then they are. And so it's just throwing me off.
Fan First wants to know McLaurin, Bateman, or Kirk start 2 in PPR. So again, we got an optimist here. He's not benching 1. He's starting 2. Nate, I'm a pessimist because it's easier to answer questions that way. Which one of these players are you benching?
I'm going to bench Christian Kirk simply because Bryce Callahan matchup and the slot is extremely difficult as a whole. And I'm just going to go matchup based and just assume that Bateman's going to give you the full game and McLaurin is going to have a good connection again.
See, and there's the IDP knowledge helping out on the offensive side of the ball, like you talked about at the beginning of the show. That's not something that maybe people that aren't in tune with the defensive players would take into their analysis. Kraig, what about you? Which one of these players are you benching?
Well, I will start McLaurin, and if you want the rationale for that, go back on the Front Yard Fantasy morning show and listen to the discussion about Terry McLaurin with Taylor Heineke. The other one out of the two of them I'll start is Bateman, and it's again twofold what Nate said, and also we know that he just gets that huge target share when he's out there with Lamar. It's basically him and Andrews.
Kalua in here said, don't ask how I did it, but I have A.J. Brown, DeAndre Hopkins, Jalen Waddle, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and T. on my team. Nice work. Whatever you did, keep doing it because that's a sexy wide receiver core. Yeah, even then, as long as you didn't get caught. As long as it wasn't unethical.
This is not legal advice. Do not listen to that.
Craig's getting nervous. I'm going to get him. He's like, what are they going to say on here? He wants to know, would you trade one of them for an Aaron Jones kind of player? So would you trade one of these wide receivers for an Aaron Jones? Craig, would you be willing to do that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's going to be unanimous yes with the depth you've got there. Nate, do you agree?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, if you can get that pulled off, if that's on the table, then yeah, for sure. Legacy
in here says I need one flex and one wide receiver. So the options are Chris Godwin, Chris Olave, Kenneth Walker, and Travis Etienne. Nate, we'll start with you. One flex, one wide receiver. Which two players are you starting?
Etienne in my flex and Godwin.
Etienne and Godwin. Craig, what about you?
Godwin and Walker.
Godwin and Walker. Joey, which way are you going?
It's Godwin and Walker for me.
Man, Walker and Etienne. That's the question, isn't it? Like, that's the question. And I think I lean Etienne. I think I'm going to lean with you, Nate, here. But like, you can't. Who are your running backs that you don't have? Who are your running backs that you don't have these guys started? Like I want to know who you have ahead of them because I think both of these guys should be starting Legacy. Like, I want to start Walker, Etienne, and Godwin. Like, unless your team is just stacked, I can't imagine there's not a way for you to fit.
He could have picked up Walker off the waiver wire because Walker was sitting on the waiver wire 3 weeks ago, just hanging there. Just saying, nobody was.
Yeah. And I'm assuming full point PPR, and so I mean, in like half point, I probably would lean Kenneth Walker. I think. No, I know I would.
It definitely changes it. Grimfin here wants to know Ingram or Waller this week. I have Ingram in so far. So we answered this with a third player in it earlier, and I believe it was a universal Waller, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Waller. Smokey the Cat wants to know what quarterback to stream this week. Andy Dalton, Russell Wilson, Daniel Jones, Geno Smith, or Jimmy Garoppolo. Joey, which of these quarterbacks would you be throwing onto your team?
You know, I have Geno and Daniel Jones back to back. I think I'm going to make the move and put Daniel Jones ahead of Geno. And I'm going to pick Geno out of this group. I'm going to pick Daniel Jones out of this group. He is secretly the quarterback 9. Did anybody know that? Because that's what he is.
Yeah.
Right now. It's unbelievable. And I like the matchup against Seattle. So yeah, give me Daniel Jones throwing 13 times to Wan'Dale Robinson.
What about you, Kraig? Are you agreeing? Is it Daniel Jones or are you rolling out one of these other options?
Boy, it's scary group of people here. Either way, they have to pick someone from. The two that I'm thinking of are Jones and Gino, and I don't know that I could bring myself to start Daniel Jones, but
It's hard, isn't it?
Yeah,
I did it last week. I had to. Josh Allen I started Daniel Jones, and boy, was that the best result I could have ever had starting Daniel Jones.
Yeah.
There have been a lot of negative Daniel Jones results. I think I'm leaning Jones as well here. What about you, Nate?
So this is where it becomes, am I going to be enamored by statistics? And what I've seen is that Andy Dalton against the Las Vegas Raiders, the Raiders pass defense has allowed essentially every team that they've played to be a QB1 on the season in week. If you look at it though, and that's the narrative. It's like, oh yeah, that's a great statistic. Well, let's look at the names. Justin Herbert, Kyler Murray, Ryan Tannehill, still scored 20. Russell Wilson, scored 30. Patrick Mahomes and Davis Mills, who scored 20. They haven't had that shutdown. They haven't stopped anybody yet.
Yeah.
It's so difficult to not go with what, Gino's done.
I kind of like that they haven't faced a middle of the road quarterback. It's either like elite or like garbage time. So,
That is
the best part is are you saying Russell Wilson is the garbage time, hopefully, right? Or is that the elite?
I'm going to leave. Listen,
we love a good cliffhanger. We had a question here. Fournette or Olave? Nate, which of these guys would you be plugging in? Fournette or Olave?
I got to go Fournette. It just feels like that's easy. Do we think that this whole Rashid White wanting to get the more work is going to lead to him actually getting more work? Or is that narrative?
I've been lighting candles, sacrificing small animals to make Rashad happen this year, but it's not happening. At least this week, I don't think. But there's a shift. I thought it was coming 2 weeks ago, and it could come now. So your guess is as good as mine because there was all the writing was on the wall for it to happen a couple weeks ago, and it didn't. So
I think I'm still leaning.
See it happen now.
I think I'm still leaning Fournette in this one. Kraig, what about you?
Joey, are you saying that Rashad White's going to turn into Keyshawn Vaughn and need like a fifth-year breakout or something here to happen? No, I would take Fournette though. Yeah,
we got lots of Fournette here.
It's like
I'm still holding out hope, Joey. That's why I had to bring him up.
I feel like there's like a strong there's a strong contingency of people that they're still in on Keyshawn Vaughn. They're like, it's gonna happen one of these days. Mantis wants to know 2 running back spots and a flex. Who starts non-PPR, so a standard league? Fournette, Swift, Pollard, St. Brown, and Connor. So we're talking Leonard Fournette, DeAndre Swift, Tony Pollard, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and James Conner. For me, Fournette and Pollard are you're plugging those guys in for your 2 running backs. It's the flex where it gets a little tricky. Kraig, do you agree with the running backs I'm starting, or are you starting a different bunch? And who would you throw into that flex spot?
I am starting Fournette and Pollard. They're just, I think, going to be the workhorse backs in those offenses, and still going to have those chances for those goal line touchdowns. But yeah, it does get tricky then. Give me Amon-Ra, I guess, for the flex.
Amon-Ra. What about you, Nate? Are you agreeing with Kraig here?
Yeah, I am. The Dolphins as a whole has been allowing enough points to the receiver. Brandon Jones is now injured and he's out, and he was their inbox safety, but he played a key role. And Eric Rowe will have to be out there, and Eric Rowe is not a great coverage safety, so it's just more open space for Amon-Ra to exploit.
Joey, how are you feeling about this flex option? Who would you be throwing in?
It's Amon-Ra St. Brown for me.
You got all Amon-Ra St. Brown here. A question from Tomas in here says, hi, guys. I need your help in my 14-team PPR league. After the Chase injury should out, I should someone on my wide receiver 2 spot. Need someone for their wide receiver 2 spot. Should I go with DJ Moore or Wan'Dale Robinson? So DJ Moore or Wan'Dale Robinson. Kraig, which way are you going on that? Which of those 2 wide receivers would you be throwing in?
Do we know? I don't off the top of my head who Carolina plays.
Atlanta. They're playing the Falcons this week.
Wan'Dale Robinson. It's yuck, but give me Wan'Dale.
It's I think I'm with you, Craig. Like I like DJ Moore, but this has been a rough season so far. I think they had a great game last week, but there's still a bad Carolina Panthers offense, and it's still, as much as I want to cheer for PJ Walker, it's still PJ Walker throwing him the ball. So Wandale's the one on this team. It seems to be a more exciting offense. I'll go with the one on the better offense, Wandale Robinson. What about you, Nate?
Yeah, every ounce of me wants to go DJ Moore, especially matchup, because what you said, who they play, and it's Atlanta. Atlanta allows top 3 air yards. Every positive stat works in DJ Moore's favor except for one, PJ Walker, and that sucks. So I probably have to lean Wandale Robinson as well.
I'm just trying to cover my DJ Moore jersey
No.
as I choose Wandale Robinson over him because I love DJ.
I'm right there with you.
Please put the DJ Moore jersey in frame because I'd like to speak to it.
Okay.
DJ Moore, thank you for being on the field for 100% of the snaps last week. I'm going to play you in this between these two.
Good.
It's beautiful,
Someone
Joey.
needs to.
What a beautiful testament to DJ Moore. Klua wants to know, do I start Pollard ahead of Dalvin Cook this week? Craig, because we
That's a
talked
question.
earlier about how high up Tony Pollard would go. Are you starting Tony Pollard or Dalvin Cook?
That's a good one. And the Vikings are playing the Cardinals.
Mhm.
Is that right?
Yep. Yeah, and Pollard playing against the Chicago Bears.
I'm probably starting Pollard.
Question mark?
Wild. Yeah, that's one of those
I'm
ones
on
where like
Burgundy.
you question it over and over again, right? Like you put it in there on Thursday, and then on Friday you're like, you switch it back to Dalvin, and then on Friday night you switch it back to Pollard. Then on Saturday morning you switch it back to Dalvin, and then whatever you decide to do on Sunday morning will be the wrong decision probably.
And you hate yourself.
Yep.
Circle
Nate,
of life.
are you starting Pollard or Dalvin Cook?
I think I would hate myself more if I sat Dalvin Cook and he scored 3 touchdowns than I would if I sat Tony Pollard and he scored 3 touchdowns. So I'll start Dalvin Cook so that my FOMO doesn't get the better of me Sunday afternoon and I have to drink myself into Tuesday. Looking out for my health.
Yeah.
I say start both of them. Like I know that's not an option that you listed there, but who the hell is in your flex? Like who the hell do you have in your
Maybe
flex
they
that
don't
you
have
can't
a
start?
flex.
Like you're right, maybe, but if you do, these are like 2 top 7, top 10 running backs this week. You got to get them both in there. Joey, what are you doing?
It's still gonna be Dalvin Cook for me, but I don't want to say Dalvin Cook. I want to say Pollard.
Everybody, thank you so much for coming and hanging out with us. I know we didn't get to everybody's questions, but I posted the link to our Discord in the chat. I'm going to put it in there one more time. If we didn't get to your question you wanted to answer, join our Discord, throw it in there, and we will do our best to get to it before game time tonight. Craig and Nate, I want to thank you guys both so much for coming on today. It was truly a pleasure and always great to learn a little bit. I need to get more into IDP, and you guys are a wealth of knowledge.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Always fun time with you guys. Appreciate it.
Everybody, make sure you go and follow our friends over on Twitter. You can find Craig on Twitter at RotoHeatCraig and Nate on Twitter at Nate Marcum. It's right there below his face on the screen. We are out of here for today, but we will be back tomorrow morning. Myself, JL, and our friend Coop live for the Front Yard Fantasy Morning Show right here on our YouTube channel or on the Better Sports Network app. So tune in then. Until tomorrow, though, we are out of here. Good luck this week. We'll see you later, everyone.
Bye, everybody.